Thank you, newsreader person. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the BP Fallon Orchestra. Tonight we present...
Pop group Madness suddenly, right? This is a very healthy group here.
Yeah.
Very
Just
healthy.
finished the Dublin Marathon.
How did you do, actually?
I'm slightly tired.
We're right out front at the back.
That's what I thought, actually. Right, folks, there you heard Madness, and sitting here in the orchestra pit are two chaps. Maybe you'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves.
Carl, I must just take this violin out my ear.
Suggs, very nice to meet you.
Oh, you're so incredibly kind. Let's sort of go backwards and do the old sort of beginnings of and how started, blah, blah, blah. I mean, first of all, Suggs, have you had a history of sort of 10 million dodgy little bands that were failures beforehand, or what happened?
No, I as far as I can remember, I don't think any of the group have really. I think the bass player, Mark, was in a school band for a while, and maybe Woody the drummer. But I think for the rest of us, Madness were the first contact that we had with professional music.
I was in a school band for a bit.
Doing what?
I was singing, but the guy whose house we rehearsed in, he was Greek, you know, right? And his father had an empty house, so we rehearsed there. But anyway, he sold his guitar to play bouzouki, believe it or not. That's how the group folded.
And what kind of a group was that, a pop group or what?
I don't know. We played things like Status Quo numbers, but I mean, we never got past sort of 2 rehearsals, you know. So we weren't really. I wasn't really in a group. We didn't even have a name.
What was the name of your first group, Suggs?
Quentin Kynaston School Band. Yeah, I played double bass in our band at school. Only because I was quite tall. That was my only. That was the only reason that they wanted me to play. I couldn't play at all.
And what kind of music was that?
I can't honestly remember. I can just remember I had to play 2 notes alternately. They're etched on my mind forever. I kept missing them every time. But I remember my mum came to the performance and she was very proud of me.
Do you want to sing us the notes now?
Bum, 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 bum. So if you recognise that piece of music, please let me know.
Get a prize. If anyone writes in, actually, and recognises that, you can have a copy of Mad Not Mad, the Madness album. So, I mean, like, a lot of your audience is very young, and some of them are getting older. You doing music at school, I mean, do you think it was actually a good idea, or are you now in a band by default?
By default, really, yeah. I mean, it was only when I got thrown out of the band that I realised how much I enjoyed being in it, really. Up to that point, it had always just been a joke, really. I mean, not, you know, I mean, it had just been for the laughs. And then when I saw the band from the audience, I thought, God, it's great, yeah, I wish I was in that band again. And it is really enjoyable, and I certainly wouldn't rather be doing anything else.
So let's talk about the beginnings of Madness. I mean, did the old yarn sort of a bunch of chums in a pub, kind of? I mean, tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind spending a couple of weeks in Ireland collecting creamy moustaches. But no, yeah, I mean, it was just something to do. None of us had very big academic aspirations or opportunities. And so we were doing nothing all day and nothing all night, and the band was our only real way of...
That'll be Lee.
That'll
it was
be
sort
Lee
of £2.50 for the weekend days, do you know what I mean?
Or extra readies.
No, you had to... That's how much you had, sort of thing. But I mean, really, Mike started it off, and he said, let's go down and rehearse, and we didn't even know what it was or anything in the beginning. We just did it, do you know what I mean? And he was the only one who saw it as work coming together.
Here's Lee, our sax player.
We just saw it as something to do at the time, you know. We didn't really realise anything would come of it.
Hypothetically, as that horn goes off, what would have...
They're playing my song.
Really? Publishing. What would have happened if, hypothetically, if the two-tone thing hadn't happened? I mean, do you think you might still be banging away in some pub somewhere?
Probably, yeah.
We'd still be banging away in the Dublin Castle now, yeah, in Parkway in Camden Town. But, you know, as Lee said, we'd have been quite happy to do that if we'd been getting 75 quid a week, you know. I think it's relative to your lifestyle, isn't it? You know.
Well, I think when it sort of started, I was working in an office and I'd gotten really bored with it. I was getting good money, but I'd gotten really bored with
What were
working
you
in
doing
an
there?
office. I was working for a petrochemical company, just filing, you know. And then myself and Lee decided to become window cleaners, just because you could be your own boss and have a laugh, you know. And well, you know, morning missus, you know, windows and all that, £6 back front, inside out.
Did you do any good?
Well, we were all right. Yeah, we made all right money, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was okay. You know, you could get up when you wanted to, poodle around, do a few windows, not do a few windows. It was up to you. But I mean, saying that, I think if we had, I mean, we were always doing schemes, me and Lee. I mean, looking back now, I mean, we did quite a few funny things. Like when the dustman strike was on, we went around trying to collect refuse for money, but no one wanted it because they all threw it in the street. But what I mean is that we would probably have done something for ourselves. We wouldn't have gone and worked for someone else, I don't think. Whether or not it would have been honest or illegal, I don't know, but we would have done something, I think.
Did you do any sort of crookery or subdivilment or whatever?
I think it was all childish stuff, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the odd musical instrument that was acquired along the way. But I mean, I don't really know anyone who doesn't.
Gotta be careful.
No, I
Sort
mean,
of freebie things, you mean, like...
well, you know,
liberate them.
If a band was playing on stage and say, you know, and a couple of their microphones went during the encore, and it was the things that everybody did at that time. All the groups that we knew were pinching things off
I mean,
each
where the
other.
hell are you going to find £80 for a microphone? Let's face it.
I mean, it's like the Pistols nicking David Bowie's microphone from Earl's
Yeah,
Court or
exactly.
something.
You can afford it. You know.
And I mean, at least they went on to do something with it. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't flogged to buy, you know, a pint or whatever.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we were certainly serious about it, you know, because it was our only outlet, really.
But did you have a job at this point, Carl? I mean, Freudian slip. To ask the question again, BP, Egypt. Did you have a job at this point, Suggs?
Well, I left school. I was leaving school about the time that I met all the band, and I used to meet them in pubs in Hampstead, because there were a lot of pubs where girls got drinks half price before a certain time, 8:30.
So what, you put a dress on?
Yeah, that's it. They just get a good-looking girl to buy you drinks all night.
Well,
But,
there's parties and things.
what I mean is there are always lots of girls and parties. And
We used to hang around Hampstead because it was, you know, a rich area, and it meant going to a pub there, you'd meet a girl who obviously probably came from a better-off family, who had parties, and
we just kind of...
you could go into their house and
Sort
to
of,
eat and
sort of a
drink.
low-rent gigolo, really.
see how the other half
Probably,
lives.
yeah, you know.
But no, funnily enough, I had jobs with Lee as well. Lee must have had jobs with everyone in the band.
Yeah.
Because we went gardening for a while and plasterboard joining. I think Lee acquired all the tools that were necessary for plasterboard joining.
Which is what now? I mean, do you want to be
Well, I
give a
don't know
little
what it
course
is.
in that quickly?
Yeah, it's when you've nailed the plasterboard up to the wall, you have to join it. You know,
You spread like you spread. That's your job, isn't it?
yeah, you have to make sure that you can't see the join. You know, which sounds easy enough. And the way he explained it to me, it sounded easy enough. And I was supposed to be the labourer, you know, with the bucket and the cack on my trousers, and he was supposed to be the expert. And anyway, it lasted for a day. But it was pretty much the same as everyone else in the band. It was odd jobs, trying to make enough money to be able to go out in the evening, you know, and maybe buy some clothes. But it was certainly never had any jobs that I felt I could spend the rest of my life doing. You know, they weren't those kind of jobs.
But I mean, at that point in time, if you looked at Top of the Pops or something, did you ever think, I'll be there, or I'd like to be there, or anything?
No, I think that was the main surprise about being in the band. When the actual first single was released, we gave a demo to the specials. We never thought in a million years that it would happen. It happened. And when it charted, it was even more incredible. And it got more incredible for sort of 3 years. You know, we got a deal, we went to America, and it was just unbelievable, you know, really.
Well, how did that actually happen? I mean, the sort of signing to Two Tone, sort of run by Jerry Dammers or whatever.
We never actually signed to Two Tone. We signed to Two Tone about a year and a half after we'd done the record and left and signed to Stiff. We just did it as a formality. We'd never actually signed to Two Tone. I just mean that it was that loose. It wasn't.
There weren't any contracts.
Yeah, it was all very loose in those days. Jerry Dammers was running it from his house, throwing the papers all over the place and having parties and just making it happen in a crazy sort of way.
Shoes on the bare light bulb, playing the same record 18 times in a row until you had to go home.
And what record was that?
I can't remember, some Northern Soul record, but you just play it like all night. But the reason we got involved with them was partly because there was an article in one of the English music papers about them, and we suddenly saw it and thought, God, they sound quite similar to us. And then they played at the Hope and Anchor, which of course
the specials now.
Yeah, as the specials, right, not as the automatics. And it was where we always were, the Hope and Anchor, and one night they came down there, and I can't remember, I started talking to Jerry Dammers, I think. And next thing we saw him in Camden Town, that's right, and gave him a tape of this demo that we'd done, and he said, yeah, he'd love to do it, release it as it was. It was just an 8-track demo, and it went out like that.
So what, this was the Prince, was it?
Yeah,
Madness?
8-track demo.
So I mean, the thing about it was we hadn't really even thought about the music business or record companies or anything. It just happened through someone that we'd met, and suddenly it was in the charts, and we were just flung into...
And Dave Robinson got us to play his wedding. His wife had seen us, or Rosemary had seen us, but also the governor of the Hope and Anchor had put a word in, saying get them, and Dave said yeah. And then we just found ourselves being chased as flavour of the month. The record business was saying, this mod thing's going to happen, this Scar thing, and suddenly we were inundated with offers, and we just couldn't believe it. But Dave Robinson was the only one who spoke sort of in our own terms, sort of thing.
What was his
another good thing about Guinness, actually? Is that when your ash drops in it, it just stays on the top, and you can pick it out.
So suddenly here you are, and you've kind of in a way sort of partly become Madness had become at this point in time a scream age group.
A what?
Scream age, little folk screaming and yelling and that kind of carry on.
We don't get that much of it.
No, I mean when you sort of like the first record was a hit and everything, I mean it was a very sort of young audience, wasn't it? Were you kind of surprised, because I mean moving from playing in say pubs to fairly more older people anyway, and then suddenly it's like school kids and something?
Well, I think our audience at the beginning was probably older. I mean, we were playing to probably 18, 19-year-olds, I should think. People around the same age as us.
Period, yeah.
I mean, before we actually sort of made a record, we had a sort of cult following of, the firm. And it was,
But I think...
we were fighting against all the other bands, and we went on to blow up the main band off.
So the audience was competitive as well then?
Yeah.
I think, but I think it was part of what was happening at the time, it was just after punk, and I think suddenly pop became a word, it became a fashion pop, you know what I mean? In the past it had been a word, it had been used as a derogatory word. We'd never looked upon ourselves as a pop group, but people started telling us that we were a pop group, and consequently we got all the pop things that go with it, including a pop audience, a younger audience, which came with doing all those kind of teeny magazines and appearing on top of the pops.
That's what happens.
Flop of the tops.
I mean, do you think, looking back on it, that was, if one was to aim it mechanically, that was the right thing to do, because that audience is...
I don't know. I think we really wouldn't have known then. We didn't know. We were really naive then. We were just totally excited by it all. I don't think we didn't understand music business at all, really.
The only person who did realise, I think, was Dave Robinson, God, what kind of a bird is that? Just flying past our hotel window, the pit window, whatever it is. But he wanted to call our second album, which was called Absolutely, Baggy Trousers, because he'd suddenly realised that, just purely coincidentally, as we didn't know it was going to be a single anyway, Baggy Trousers, we'd got this great big kind of school kind of following. And it was something that he thought we should capitalise on, but that we didn't think we should. It was necessary, no.
Yeah, but I mean, even the videos which Dave Robinson of Stiff Records was very largely responsible for, I mean, they were very kiddie orientated, weren't they? With sort of
I don't know, really, to be honest,
as
that's our fault for just behaving like we do in front of a camera.
But how do you think about that sort of what I call the bumblebee syndrome? Like they would come along and say, well, you're the bumblebee today.
If you were into it, you were a bumblebee. If you weren't into it, you were sulking, going, I'm not going to be a bloody bumblebee. That's the way it was, But,
no, I mean, there came a point where it went a bit more sour, and up to that point, we enjoyed every minute of it, and we wouldn't have done those things if we didn't enjoy them, you know. But there did come a point where it suddenly became obvious that he was absolutely pushing. It wasn't
one side of it, yeah.
It wasn't just accident. It was Dave trying to manipulate us to aim at the lowest common denominator, you know, which is I think a bit demoralising and a bit kind of undermines the reasons for wanting to be in a group. You know, you're not in a group to sell yourself like a packet of crisps. You're in it to enjoy it and you write songs for yourself and for your immediate friends, not for any specific market or for, you know.
Does that still exist now?
Yeah, I mean, more so.
Sort of madness having left Stiff, you set up your own, you set up your own label, Zarjazz.
Yeah,
one large step just beyond.
Mine.
Well, we can nip in and out of them,
yeah,
you know.
Why not?
Suddenly you're in a position where you've got to kind of, I suppose, more or less run your own business and everything like that.
Right.
How do you find that? Is that difficult, or do you enjoy it, or is it a sketch that you play and win or lose?
I think it's quite difficult to say because it's only just started, you know. I think it'd be easier to say in a couple of years. That would be the phone.
Whom can this be?
Back, forwards, sideways.
With Zarjazz and running it yourselves, do you find that very difficult, or do you enjoy it, or have you kind of learnt a lot now and you know sort of some of the sketches that you can use?
I think you cannot. The only way to answer this is that we're on Stiff and we got a few acts signed to Stiff.
Like whom?
Pookie Snackenberger, the Go-Go's, Tempole Tudor, and the Inspirational Choir. We got Dave interested to come along and check them out, and just through that, I think then we thought, God, you know, we could have done this ourselves, really. But I don't think we knew enough then. But that's one of the reasons for starting Zarjazz. The other reason was we have an office, a lot of staff, all the equipment there, a studio, and we just felt that we weren't using it enough and that it was going to waste, and we could do a lot more with it, and that's another reason.
But suddenly, I mean, the whole thing has got quite serious, hasn't it?
It is serious, but I mean, our part in it really, to be honest, is the A&R side of it. We sit there, we listen to tapes, and we decide of them one way or another. And the basic running of it is done by a manager and a label manager.
But I mean, do Madness sit down and have board meetings and discuss what single to release and where to tour and all that?
We all get exceedingly bored. But yeah, we do, you know. We haven't been recently because we're on tour, but before this tour we'd meet every Friday at 12 noon, and we'd normally
just go through it, you know.
Listen to all the new tapes, find out what the bands who've been recording have been doing, and generally decide, make decisions.
Just keep aware of what the manager's doing while we're not there.
Making highly important
Well, we're trying to write our own stuff.
What about the song you wrote, Carl, that Fergal Sharkey recorded back by you chaps?
Well, that was a song that we'd written probably for Keep Moving, for the last album, which didn't get on the album because we didn't feel that we'd done it right. Both of us tried the vocals, but we didn't. I don't know, it just didn't happen for us. And one day we were at Top of the Pops, and it's, as you know, probably it's a lot of hanging around doing nothing. So we decided to go out and have a lunch, and over lunch we were talking about it, because we knew it was a pretty good song, and we didn't really want to leave it, because songs that aren't recorded at the moment tend to be dumped, you know, with the band. So we felt we wanted to do something with it. And we've always liked the Undertones, and we thought of Fergal. Chris, I think, thought of getting Fergal.
Chris had met Fergal a couple of times. And where did we meet him? I can't remember. It was at Top of the Pops, wasn't it?
Yeah, well,
we just mentioned
I met him at Humphrey Ocean's exhibition. But anyway, you know, it just came together, you know. But, yeah, he was up for it. He'd left the Assembly, or not left them. He'd done that single, and I suppose he wanted a lever for his solo career, and we were it. And I was quite happy to do it.
What was the idea of you chaps backing him on it?
Just to get it done, really, because we wouldn't charge him.
Zarjazz have put out, I mean, they haven't sort of sold 10 million copies necessarily.
No, they haven't done brilliantly. I mean, I think running a record company is, to an extent, Russian roulette. You know, it's quite risky.
Do you think it's even more risky when a group are running one, though? I mean, like examples.
Probably, because you know, it's quite. I mean, with most things, I think, when you're a musician or an artist or whatever, it's a selfish thing. You do what pleases you and hope that other people will like it. You know, if you bring it down to that, that's what it basically is. So, running a record company is basically music that we like, and we hope
Other people
that
will
we're
like it.
picking what hopefully other people will like. You know.
But no, I do think, I mean, to make a record company really successful, you probably need to be there all the time, pushing and
Yeah.
shoving, and which we obviously don't have time to do. But I mean, we just hopefully leave enough of our influence, and the people that work for us are in a similar enough mind to be able to do the things that we'd like to happen.
Well, I mean, they're there, but we pick people we work with.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And we wouldn't pick someone that we didn't identify with. You know.
Let's talk about how Madness look. I mean, you must be kind of financially fairly well off, and yet you still retain the sort of Jack the Lad type vibe, haven't you?
I don't know. I mean, I think anyone who hasn't had much gets a bit obsessed about trying to look like they've got something, you know, which I think we all did when we were younger. You know, you'd all want to have good suits and you want to have good shoes and good clothes generally. And I think that's just part of wanting something you've never had.
I mean, you'd never see a photograph of Madness in a limo or something.
No, well, I mean, you might do. There's probably a few floating around.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a question of, you know, value for money. It seems a bit of a waste for us, that's all. I mean,
We try and
if
deal
we
with...
fly, we travel economy just because it's a bit...
I know.
It's silly.
I find
Do
that
you know
very.
what I mean?
I find that very interesting. I mean, for instance.
No, well, I think the thing is, we deal with reality. You know, this is something we've been talking about a lot recently. And, you know, this is a fantasy business. It's all fantasy. What we're talking about now is 95% fantasy. And to keep any sense of reality, you have to live in the real world. You know, you can't write about the real world unless you live in it. And you can't live in the real world by travelling around in limousines and being...
Well, if you pretend... Look, I mean, you can't travel in
Protected
limos
from
every
it.
day, and I'd hate to get used to it. 'Cause it might not happen one day, do you know what I mean? And...
I mean, do you think like that? I mean, that the whole thing might fizzle
yeah,
out.
of course it will. You know, no one's sure of anything in this life, you know, and we don't want to pretend to be something because you end up what you're pretending to be. And by not doing all of this stuff, we avoid all the problems that go with it.
But how come the Madness are like that and not like another group? I mean, who? Like, I mean, your Durans
I
or
don't know,
something.
I mean,
Who?
there's probably a few groups. I mean, no, I think there's a lot
I think
of
it's
groups
just
like
different,
us, but it's just...
It's just a different outlook, maybe, on life in general. I don't think it's... You know, I know people who've got nothing in London but can still afford to drive around in Porsches and have gold and stuff. I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying I know a couple of people who obviously are crooks. But I'm saying they're not in pop groups, but they still flaunt it a lot more than I do. I'll go in the pub, or I'll come down to the pub on my bicycle, and they laugh at me, you know, they're people I know. But they flaunt it more than I do, and that's nothing to do with being in Duran Duran or the Thompson Twins or anyone.
It's how you see it.
It's just how you look upon
What's important.
your relation to, I mean, the relation between yourself and the outside world, you know. But it's just, you know, we have a similar thought about a lot of things as a group, musically and socially, you know, and that's another similar thought.
Is that why on your records you endorse CND and Greenpeace then?
Yeah, because it's something that we all agree with, and that's all we say, you know, it's just something that we agree with.
Yeah, we're not trying to, I mean, I don't know, we're not trying to ram it down people's throats. It's up to them to decide, you know, how to take it.
Do you want to tell me why you endorse both of those?
Well, I endorse C&D. I mean, I don't know whether they're very successful in achieving their aims, right? I'm a bit worried about it. But
Explain that.
well, I don't know how effectual they are, that's all. I don't know whether they're just there just to placate the people, and whether they're just allowed to be there, or whether they're actually really achieving anything. But basically, the only reason I like them is because I don't really think that people can kill on my behalf without my agreement. Do you know what I mean? That's taking it down to a simple level, really, which is how I do with most things.
And what about
Greenpeace, their
Greenpeace,
action,
yeah.
they do it, and they make people really realise that they have a really stupid attitude to a lot of things. They force people into
Yeah, I mean, obviously
thinking about it, you know.
and they put their own lives at risk,
Yeah.
which is sort of which is the last, you know, last line, really.
And basically, meeting them, they are average Joes, as you'd say. You know what I mean? They're not.
They're not politicians or something.
No,
Right.
they're totally, and you know, they're not into politics whatsoever. Their business is just, making it a better place to live in. And they're just ordinary people who are not, but I don't, I'm
They're not power mad.
they're not any, they're not into any of the sort of, trips that a lot of people are. They're not looking to make a career for themselves. They're people who don't get publicity, who don't get their names made, don't get paid much, but they're out there doing it for us.
I
do you
think
know
that's
what I mean?
another thing about the rock and roll sort of myth is that the only real risk you can take is the one with your own life, And that
Explain
includes
that,
that includes all the I was up all night and I threw a television down the toilet, but none of that involves risking your own life, which is just, I'm just saying, it's part of the fantasy of hellish life on the road. When you compare it to someone like Greenpeace or some people from Greenpeace sitting in a dinghy having barrels of oil thrown at them. And then across the news of the world, it's the
They're
bloke
actually
out of
doing
Spandau
something.
Ballet threw himself out of a limo going down Oxford Street.
Heavy.
And, you know what I mean? Twisted his ankle. So what?
And do you think the whole thing is
Careful now, because the Spans are big fellas, yeah.
fairly...
Yeah, I'll just use them as an example.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Do you think the whole rock and roll thing is fairly knee-deep in bullshit then, really?
We want to be as far away from it without leaving it as possible. That's our phrase at the moment. That's exactly what we're at.
Do you want to say that in harmony, seeing you've worked it out previously?
No, I don't know about harmonies.
I can't remember the exact wording of it.
All right. Let's talk about the
I
lyrics
have to
of...
check my contract.
I just have...
Where's my script?
Let's check the... Let's talk about the lyrics of Madness songs, right? I mean, I think only now people are really figuring out that there actually is something fairly decent in some of them, lyrically.
It's probably because we've taken the dummies out of our mouths,
But I mean, what about this thing? Are they kind of deliberately hidden in order to get through, or is that just sort of, well, this is
Who
how they
knows?
come out, or who knows?
Who knows, BP? I think, I don't think...
I know BP.
I don't think... I think the hardest thing in the world to talk about is yourself, and then the second hardest thing to talk about is the things that you do, And when you're writing a song, I don't think about it when I'm writing it. I'm just writing it because it's something I feel strongly about, or it's something I think is good.
Well, I mean, do you think it's odd sort of sitting here doing these kind of things, rabbiting into a microphone and being asked about your cosmic views on how to save the world and all of that? Do you think it's odd?
Stuff.
I mean, do you enjoy it, or do you think, oh God, we've got to do this
No,
bloody
I think,
thing now?
it comes down to a basic thing, really, as we were saying.
Yeah, we've gone over all of this.
yesterday.
It's good to sort it out beforehand.
Yeah. Is that, if you enjoy having the conversation, if you enjoyed it, then it was worthwhile,
If you haven't, you've wasted 20 minutes of your life.
Plus the people attempting to listen.
Well, I mean, it's a selfish thing. Again, most things are selfish. I mean, if I talked to them, it'd be another thing, you know what I mean? It'd be a
Personally.
one-to-one thing, you know what I mean? Right now, our consideration is that we have a good conversation, and if anyone's listening to it, it's up to them to decide whether it's interesting to listen to. Do you know what I mean?
Lost 10
It could
million
be a
listeners
right
there.
load of rubbish, it could be interesting.
No, I
But
think
for us,
obviously,
it just means, have I wasted time sitting here, or has it been interesting?
I think the only way you can judge things is, I'm talking about the things that Madness do, or if you like them, You don't judge them as whether you think they're entertaining for the populace as a mass, or else you'd end up like the Sun. You know what I mean? I think...
lowest common denominator, grotty.
Right, what I'm saying is, I think the best, most interesting thing we could do is have a good conversation as far as the listener is concerned. You know what I mean?
Well, I hope so.
I mean, otherwise...
And what I'm
just
saying is, this is the only way you
facts, and I
judge it,
don't know,
not saying that we just would rather just talk about ourselves.
No, I mean, well, I
I'm
think
just saying.
also it's a thing of sort of getting to know people. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's what this is all about. They want to know what we're up. I think
What you're about.
what you're about. Yeah, why you're doing what you do.
Well, let's talk about the album Mad Not Mad. I mean, sort of, and the content of that. I mean, for instance, Yesterday's Men. Which, people say, oh, there's a nice pop tune, sounds a bit like Spanish Harlem, or whatever they might say, right?
Yeah.
What about actually what it's about?
What it's about is, it's just about the fact that people don't seem to notice that it's always the same people that are in control of their destiny,
Like whom?
Like the people that, 5% of the people that run England, that are the same people that were there in the 17th century, in the 16th century, in the Middle Ages and beyond. Just the fact that people don't seem to notice that
that they're being used.
That their lives are being controlled by somebody else. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty naive song, really, when I listen to it now. But in fact, it started with a quote that I read. It must get better in the long run. You know, it's like a big conservative thing. How they won the election, really. Tighten your belts and things will get better. But things never do get better, and it's always the same people that have to tighten their belts. You know. And anyway, I read another quote that said, "Yeah, it will get better in the long run, but in the long run we'll all be dead," which is the bottom line. How long is the long run? Yeah, pardon? Our sax player wrote that one, and that was a bit of an insular kind of song, really, in that it was about the group primarily. It was when we'd finished with Stiff Records, and we didn't finish very happily with Stiff Records, as I don't know, maybe people know.
Do you want to explain why?
Well, it was partly that we were so close to Dave Robinson when we started that in the end his workload got such that he couldn't keep the same rapport that he'd had with us, and ours did as well, so we slowly started separating. And then he saw us more and more as just a commodity and less as people with brains, you know. Friends, right. And in the end it ended up as money, you know, and that's what finished it. It was an argument about money. But the song I'll Compete is just about, you know...
About that.
I'll be your pop swap come floppy disk, you know.
Say that again.
I'll be your pop swap come floppy disk.
That seems a kind of a dig at the kind of tackier end of teendom.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I'll be whatever you want me to be. Go on, you're right, I'm wrong, tell me. You know what I mean? It ends up like that. It did with Stiff.
Were you scared bricks? I mean, being away for sort of 18 months or so and losing Mike Barson, who was very important to the band.
It was definitely in the back of our minds. Do you know what I mean? And I think we always keep a quite stiff upper lip, to be horrible. I mean, I wish we didn't, and I wish it wasn't a British phrase, but it is. But we keep a stiff upper lip, I think, and we keep together about things, even when it's getting heavy. We always try and keep.
We're proud to be.
Still got time for a laugh and a joke, you know. No, but you know, otherwise. It'd get you down massively.
We're proud of our socks.
Do you like it though still?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
What?
Being in Madness.
The best thing about it is the freedom to do things, you know. It's a privilege, really.
Medical problems. Yeah. Sick of them. I'm sick of them.
But let's go on to Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, maybe before we talk about the actual the song, tell us about the video, which people may not have seen. I don't know where they've been, but
yeah. Well, of course, it's another of Lee's songs, and you know, Lee's songs aren't always the easiest to dissect because he writes them in a very singular style, you know, which is quite oblique. But from what I can gather, Uncle Sam is just about the obsession people have with America, you know, particularly in England, and about the power America has over England, you know, over the world, I suppose. And it's just a kind of sarcastic thing, really, you know. I'm sailing across the sea to see my Uncle Sam. He's a wonderful man, gives me things to do. And the video was just supposed to be a lot of cliches about America, you know, which it is and isn't.
Fascination with the uniforms and survivalism.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, there's always the threat that goes hand in hand with that of us and them, you know. We've got to fight them off, you know. We've got to protect our country from them. And they don't realise that they're not even coming, you know.
But I mean, you're reading a mag in that, I think it's you, isn't it? With gung-ho written.
Yeah, soldiers of fortune.
So I mean,
that was just a joke. Yeah, I mean, I had oodles of these magazines.
Yeah, there's also a Schneider, the Ramboism, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's part of that. I mean, it's part of something that's very popular at the moment. America's kind of trying to grasp onto some kind of...
You put your boots on, you get your survival knife, your hip flask, your gas canister, you know.
And you go out and defend...
And then what do you do with it? You know what I mean? Once you've got it, what do you do with it? Go and stab a dummy, you know.
And you go out and
destroy a dummy, you know.
Go out and defend hamburgers with your life. TCB, taking care of burgers.
Yeah. What are you doing?
But I mean, I think it's just something to do with this kind of vacuous pride, you know, that America seems to have at the moment. This, you know, like obsessive defending themselves from themselves, you know. No, and I mean, I obviously like being in England, or I wouldn't live there, you know. I mean, there are some things I like about it. But I think most of the good things about it are being whittled away by this government, and it's getting more and more difficult to enjoy living there, really.
Is there anything you chaps can do about that, or are you sort of like a pop group, you know?
It's difficult to say, you know. I mean, I sometimes, like we were saying yesterday, I sometimes think that maybe we are just a pop group, and... but I mean, you know, our only platform is doing things like this and saying the things that we believe, you know, and that's all you can do, and if people listen, then they do. And
I'd just like to say quickly, I do like living in England, otherwise I wouldn't live there. But I mean, part of that is that we all live in England, it's part of our life, and to live anywhere else would change everything within the band. England is going through a bad time, but it is a good place in comparison to other countries, which, you know, are under a much more militaristic rule, and you know, are very oppressive. So we are very fortunate that we have an element of freedom of speech. That is getting sticky. There is a lot of, you know, diversity there with the old phone tapping, and there are a lot of naughty new rules that the police can use to, you know.
Like what?
There's a new rule of, well, breach of the peace basically is no longer breach of the peace. It used to be civil, now it's criminal, which means that anyone can get arrested for virtually anything.
Just for shouting in the
Just
street.
for shouting in the street, you're a criminal. Which is terrible, really, which means that anyone who goes on marches for anything can, in fact,
be arrested.
Become a criminal for shouting or anything. But, you know, like Thatcher, 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 out, out, out. You could be arrested for that now, which means if you go on 5 marches in 1 month, that means you've been nicked 5 times. When you go up every time, it's going to look worse and worse, and you probably end up in prison, which is bad against freedom of speech. But saying that, there's a lot of good things, a lot of bad things, and there's a lot of terrible things that England have done to other countries, you know. I mean, I'm sure
Ireland.
you know, well, to every, well, a lot of countries.
How do you feel about that, Carl? I mean, like your family originally coming
Well,
from
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know.
Where
it
are they
gets
from,
more
your
and more
folks?
confusing. Mayo and Kilkenny, but they lived in Dublin too, but it gets more and more confusing. I don't know the way out. I mean, I'm sure the more you know about it, the more difficult it becomes. But saying that, England is still a good place, even though they've done all of that. You know, you can't keep saying the bad things, you know. I mean, you've got to at least try to make something good out of it all. And there are good people in England, just as there are good and bad in Ireland and every other country. Same with America, you know what I mean?
All right, finally, Carl and Suggs, after that political speech here in the BP
Thank you very
Fallon.
much. Where's my orange
The
box?
$1 million question, folks. Your favourite Madness track?
Show Me the Way to Go Home.
Apart from that one.
My Way.
Apart from that one. By the band.
I
think we might
enjoyed
have.
It Must Be Love yesterday anyway. I thought it was really nice. The crowd were great.
All right, so it must be love. Suggs and Carl.
It seemed good last night anyway.
Really,
Yeah.
being in the orchestra. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I must get out of this pit.
Thanks for using all that tape.
Thank you.
It's around up to my knees in it.
No more.
I never thought I'd miss you.